to Scott Fox After 9. I'm going to warn you right off the bat, this is not going to be a particularly long episode today because I am a Blue Jays fan who tried to stay up and watch the rest of that game last night. Man, that was wild, wasn't it? 18 innings. An instant classic is what some people are calling it. Jays, of course, came out on the wrong end of that game, though. They lost 6-5. Brendan Little, again, serves up another critical home run to the opposition. Wow. What can I say? I mean, I went to bed last night around 11:45 Toronto time. Woke up around 1:30 to go to the bathroom and then realized this game is still on. Tried to stay up, fell asleep again. And when I finally woke up, when my first alarm went off at 3:05, the broadcast was still on. The game was over, but the broadcast was still on. I don't know how Dan Schultz and Buck Martinez do it. Everybody talks about the players. Oh, my God. How can you believe they had to play an 18-inning game and then they've got another one tonight? Yeah, I can believe it because some of those guys are making a ridiculous amount of money. I don't feel bad for them at all. I feel bad for the staff that works at Rogers Center in Toronto that had to work until 3 o'clock in the morning last night because there were still people at Rogers Center watching the end of that game last night. All around, it sucks to lose, but I'm going to play a little bit of audio from last night before I get to today's content, and that is going to focus almost exclusively today on Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Today, it's a Doug episode of After 9. But before I get to that, like I said, let's do a little bit about the ball game last night. I'm going to start off with something controversial. This is our anthem singer from last night in LA. He's a Canadian, I don't want to say pop star because he's not a star. It's amazing to me that people would even think that he could sing the national anthem last night. This is J.P. Saxe.
Oh, Canada, our home, our native land.
Yeah, he did it. Our home on native land. Hey, you're entitled to feel however you want to feel about that, but it doesn't change the fact that J.P. Saxe got asked to sing the national anthem and represent a nation. He got asked to represent Canada, and he deliberately, to make a political point that is woke in nature, he changed the words of our national anthem. If we all agree, if we have a vote or something like that, we elect a government that has the will to do it, we can change the national anthem. Trudeau changed the national anthem. Used to be in All Thy Sons command. It got changed to in All of Us command to be more inclusive. If we're going to change it, then change it. But these loser pop stars that want to arbitrarily change it to try and make some woke point, I don't understand that. You can feel however you feel. Maybe you do think that this is our home on native land. If you feel that way, you're totally entitled to do that. But it doesn't change the fact that the words are our home and native land. And he had no right to change that last night. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to organize protests and boycotts against J.P. Saxe. If you want to do that, fine. It's just that he's not really that popular to begin with. So it's going to be a pretty short fight if you want to do that. But either way, I thought that was inappropriate from J.P. Saxe last night. After the game, real great words from Jays manager John Schneider, trying to keep things in perspective. Listen to a little bit of the manager.
How big is the challenge to make sure that this game, you don't lose this game twice?
Not at all. I mean, not at all. This group is going to be ready to play tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's longest game in World Series history, whatever it is, tied for it. I mean, these guys are enjoying it. You know, they were in the right mindset and the right headspace the entire time. You know what I mean? It sucks that it's late right now. We got to come back and do it again tomorrow. But these guys are going to be more than ready. You know what I mean? The Dodgers didn't win the World Series today. They won a game. You know what I mean? And these guys are going to be ready to go tomorrow.
And that's the message. The Dodgers did not win the World Series last night. They won a game that went 18 innings. It is record-setting. But they didn't win the World Series last night. We've been down worse than this before. We were down 2-0. And we came back and won that series. We're down 2-1. Go Jays, go. I really hope that tonight's a good night, although Shane Bieber worries me, man. You know, when we picked him up, I was a little excited. I thought, man, he used to be a really great pitcher. And so far, I don't think we've seen his best stuff. I'm hoping that tonight is when we're going to see his best stuff. You know who I think is ready, though? Shohei Ohtani. Man, watching that guy play game after game, 3 in a row now I've watched this guy. That's more than I've ever watched Shohei Ohtani. He really is the real deal, though. At bat, that guy is a threat every single time. Thank God he's pitching tonight, because he is a threat every time he comes to the plate. John Schneider last night after the game basically said he may never hit a ball again. He's probably going to get intentionally walked every time he comes up in the World Series.
We're trying to pitch around him, you know what I mean? And you trust Sir Anthony to make pitches to do that. And sometimes for pitchers, it's hard to do that, you know, when you're kind of trying to throw a ball and didn't put it where he wanted to put it. But, you know, he had a great game. He's a great player. But I think, you know, after that, you just kind of take the bat out of his hands.
And not to give away secrets, but this is pretty much what we should expect going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably going to get walked every single time he comes to the plate going forward. Okay, that's where I'm going to leave the Blue Jays stuff. And like I said, this is going to be a shorter episode because there's really one big thing to focus on. I'd love to be able to have a correspondent in Jamaica for you right now because I am so worried about the people in Jamaica. The people who live there, the tourists, and all of the people who are stationed there, and so on and so forth. It's scary what's coming, man. A Category 5 hurricane hitting anywhere is going to be devastating. It's going to hit the south of Jamaica, and then it's going to go up over the country, and if you can picture it, it's basically going to split the uprights between Montego Bay and Ocho Rios. If you're in Negril right now, you're going to get cloud, you're going to get rain, but you're not going to get the brunt of the hurricane. Montego Bay and Ocho Rios are going to get the bulk of it, and Kingston to the south, the capital, is also going to get hit pretty hard. Then it's going for Cuba after that. It'll spend some more time in the water, and I think it might even pick up again. It'll go from a 5 to a 4, maybe even a 3 by the time it leaves Jamaica. It could be a Category 5 again by the time it hits Cuba. Santiago to Cuba is where it's going to hit. The Guantanamo area, that's on the eastern part of Cuba. Then it's going to continue up into the Bahamas, possibly hit the Turks and Caicos. And I know there's a lot of people in the path of Hurricane Melissa, and I'm thinking about all of them. I'm hoping for a good outcome here, but this storm does not look good. So in the absence of having someone in Jamaica to talk to right now, I'll leave it at I'm thinking about the people and I'm hoping for a good outcome here. But I'm going to move on to the issue that I think is on most people's minds. Premier Doug Ford is trying to press reset. It seems that way. Quick recap in case you missed yesterday's episode, although I highly encourage you go back and listen to it because I did and I thought it was a great episode. I would say that, but I thought it was particularly good. Lots of great audio in there. Doug Ford did not like the way negotiations were going with America. You'll recall he was insisting we got to fight back. If you get punched in the mouth, you got to go punch that bully right back. That is what Doug Ford was saying. Now we've learned a little bit more. When he put out that ad, the one that has created so much controversy here, particularly in America, we were told he put out that ad to start a conversation. Doug saying he wanted to start a conversation. And he did run it by the Prime Minister's office. That was something that we didn't know when I recorded yesterday. That the Prime Minister not only saw this ad, he must have signed off on it. That was confirmed yesterday during a news conference with the Ontario Finance Minister, Peter Bethenfalvy.
Ads fall under your ministry. With that government ad that has led to headlines around the world, did you keep the federal government in the loop before going ahead with that ad?
Oh, sure. There's lots of conversations between the Prime Minister and Premier Ford. They have a great relationship. As you heard last Thursday, the Premier reiterate that Premier Ford has 100% confidence in Prime Minister Carney. We're in this together.
Okay. All right. Well, the Premier has 100% confidence in Prime Minister Carney. And the Finance Minister says Premier Ford and Prime Minister Carney are very, very good friends. They're close. Okay. So the Prime Minister knew exactly what it was that Doug Ford was going to do. He knew what was going to happen there, and he let it happen. Apparently, all of the premiers were shown that ad before that ad started airing in America. And of course, we all know how much it blew up after that happened. Let me play for you a little bit of Premier Doug Ford yesterday in the Ontario legislature talking about how he really just wanted to start a conversation. He didn't mean for all of this to happen. He just wanted to have a conversation. Listen to this.
We want zero tariffs. That's what I'm fighting for.
Hear, hear.
But what it did do, Madam Speaker, it created a conversation with every Republican, Democrat, governor, congressperson, and senator. That's what it created. As we're out there fighting the front lines, you're sitting back and all you do is criticize. Why don't you join Team Ontario? Why don't you join Team Canada like the rest of the premiers?
Get on side.
Why don't you get on side like my good friend Wab Canoe's on side, or Premier Evie from BC's on side? I spoke to every single premier. They're on side. Their exact words is, "Don't stop. Keep fighting for Canada." That was the message I got from all the premiers that I spoke to.
Well, what's interesting is the premiers he didn't speak to, and I'm going to circle back on that because I think there's a couple of premiers that have got a slightly different strategy than when Doug Ford has. So let's be honest here. Doug Ford is now trying to change the narrative. Now, I think Doug realizes there are people in this country that hold him personally responsible for the state of negotiations between Canada and the USA. We were told a deal is imminent. I was told the deal was about to be signed, or it was about to be introduced to the Canadian people by Prime Minister Carney. And then it all got blown up because Doug Ford and apparently Mark Carney decided to run that particular ad. Doug is saying, I just wanted to start a conversation. I just wanted to get people talking. And mission accomplished, I started a conversation. Okay, well, let's go back. Let's do a little recent history. Last week, Doug Ford wasn't talking about starting a conversation. He was talking about fighting back.
That guy, President Trump, he's a real piece of work. You know something? What my message to the Prime Minister when I meet him on Thursday is, if you can't get a deal, let's start hitting him back. Let's start hitting the U.S. back hard. Because all Trump does is continue. We're nice, play nice in the sandbox. And today's yesterday's 10% on softwood lumber. After it was 35%, he increased it 10%. And then he all of a sudden, one day out of the blue, someone must have told him cabinet makers. And we should ship a lot of cabinets down there. And all of a sudden now there's a tariff there. I am sick and tired of sitting and rolling over. We need to fight back. Folks, we are an economic powerhouse. We buy $356 billion of goods, Canada does, off the U.S. We're the number one customer to the U.S. No one in the world buys more goods than what we do. We need to start hitting back and hitting back hard. That's the only thing this person understands.
Okay, so there is another unhinged Doug Ford. Can't control his emotions, just freaking out. I hate that guy. Rah! So let's be honest here. Doug wants the people who think that Doug and Mark intentionally sabotaged that deal with America. That's a lot of people think that, and they hold Doug Ford responsible. Doug's trying to say, don't blame me. I was just trying to start a conversation. Did that sound like somebody who was just trying to start a conversation? That sounded like a guy who wanted to fight. Fight back is what he said. That's a quote. We need to fight back. So he did what he knew was going to poke the bear and push all the buttons, and he put that Ronald Reagan ad out. And by the sounds of it, there were some premiers that fully supported him. Who are the ones that he used as examples? Wab Canoe. Okay, that's an NDP premier from Manitoba. David Eby, an NDP premier from British Columbia. What did Francois Legault say? What did Tim Houston say? What did Danielle Smith in Alberta say? He says all the premiers he spoke to told him, you got to go, keep going. I would kind of like to know what Danielle Smith had to say. You know, as all this has been unfolding, there's been two different strategies that are unfolding parallel. You've got Doug Ford going all unhinged and fight. And you've got Danielle Smith, who's been all about diplomacy, who's been all about let's work with the Americans and let's get a deal that works for everybody. Sounds like we had a deal on the table. And we sabotaged it. Mark Carney knew that ad was going to really push Donald Trump's buttons. Doug Ford, he did it because he knew it was going to really push Donald Trump's buttons. For them to come out now and try and backtrack and say something like, oh, well, we just wanted to start a conversation. Bull. Everybody knows you wanted a fight and you got a fight. And a lot of people strongly suspect that you wanted the fight because you don't want a deal. Here is the U.S. ambassador to Canada. This is the guy who speaks on behalf of the Trump administration in Canada. He's their ambassador to our country. He was on the Closer Look podcast, Pete Hoekstra, talking about Doug Ford.
Doug is on a different page than where the U.S. administration is. And so, so no, I haven't moved Doug to a point where I can get him to be a strong advocate for the Canadian-American relationship.
Doug Ford is not a strong advocate for the Canada-USA relationship. That's right from the ambassador of America, the guy who speaks on behalf of Donald Trump in Canada. They don't see Doug Ford as somebody who is playing ball here, trying to smooth things over between Canada and the USA. We got close. They intentionally poked the bear, and now our trade deal has fallen apart. Now we've got even higher tariffs than we did. Now what do? I actually heard a really, really great take just yesterday. This was on CTV Power Play with Vashi Kapellos. Vashi had a whole panel assembled, and included on that panel was a former member of parliament, my former member of parliament, actually, and a woman that I've got a lot of time for. She is a very intelligent woman. She is very, very good at this sort of thing. And Lisa Raitt talked a little bit about an expectation that she has, and this is quite reasonable, for the Prime Minister at this particular point.
What I would like to hear from the Prime Minister is, well, what was in the deal? What was in the deal that you rejected? Why did you reject it? What's our plan going forward? How much is it going to cost us in the short term? How much is it going to cost us in the long term? I can't really fault Premier Eby or Premier Ford for fighting, because there are two really big things not included in that deal: autos and forestry. So where are those? I mean, I was really hoping that speech last Tuesday was going to lay out some of these things. We've been hearing about the rumor of a deal being imminent for many, many, many days. The Americans were talking about it, and we didn't sign off. Why? I'm sure it's good reasons, but we deserve an explanation.
Lisa is absolutely right. If there was a deal there, what was so bad about the deal that the Americans were proposing that we walked away from here, and then threw salt in the wound with that Ronald Reagan ad, and then Doug Ford out doing a video which took a shot at Donald Trump with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, basically Trump's mortal enemy? We've been poking the bear. We have not done anything here to get that deal signed. So what was in the deal? That was what Lisa wanted to know, and that's what I want to know. What was so bad about the deal that we said no? Why would we walk away from that? I guess that's up to the Prime Minister. He's got to tell us what was in that deal and what we're missing out on, and how much did that cost us, and how much longer are we going to wait? Let's remember exactly what Mark Carney told us. He's the guy who can get a deal. He's the guy who knows how to negotiate with Donald Trump. He's the one who is going to solve this problem for Canada. Where are you, Mark? What was in the deal that you didn't like? Why did you walk away from it? How much money is that going to cost the Canadian people? Any idea how much longer these tariffs are going to be on? Because it seems like because he said no, we're going to be dealing with tariffs for a very long time. We've now been kicked to the back of the line, and if we want to work out a deal with the Americans, now we got to wait our turn again. Other countries got these deals done very, very quickly, not us. And it's frustrating as all hell. I'll tell you, it really is. Mark Carney, what do we have to do to deal with Donald Trump? Well, this was him back in the spring.
No, like what our strategy with Trump, and I've dealt with Trump in the past, he respects strength. He respects strength. Like a lot of bullies, he respects strength. And that's part of the reason, look, we got to build here for ourselves, but it's also to show him that we are masters in our own home, right? We're in charge.
And is that what we're doing now? I don't know anymore. I really don't. One of the things I want to play for you here is some of Doug Ford's news conference that he did yesterday. I don't know if he was in damage control mode or if he was taking a victory lap yesterday. I really can't tell if Doug Ford is proud of himself or if he's embarrassed. But I know that the country seems to be evenly split. Half the country seems to be very proud of Premier Ford for what he did, and half the country seems to be embarrassed at what he did. I'm somewhere in the middle. Please don't read anything into my tone. I don't know if what Doug did was the right idea. I do know, though, that he poked the bear and now all of a sudden we don't have a deal. And I know that he knew, because he's a Reagan fan himself, that doing that Ronald Reagan ad was going to get under Donald Trump's skin. Here is Premier Ford yesterday outside the legislature.
That was the most successful ad in North American history. What would failure look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Brian, that we had over 1 billion impressions around the world, and what we did, we generated a conversation that wasn't happening in the U.S. Now, every single local media, every large media, medium-sized media in the U.S. is talking about it. So is every governor, senator, and congressman and woman, not only nationally, but statewide. And the message was very clear. Protectionism does not work. And that's the message we have to the American people. And we're the third largest trading partner in the world, Ontario is. And I wanted to get the message out there. We achieved our goal, and now we paused it. We didn't have to spend the $75 million I thought we would, a fraction of that, and I'll get the numbers for you shortly. But what we did, we ended up with earned media of anywhere from 300 to 400 million people in impressions. We call them views for the people at home. But I was getting constituents calling me saying their relatives in India saw it, in Italy, Portugal, Scotland. My niece in UK said it was running all over, in every outlet in the U.S. So we achieved our goal, and now we put it on pause.
Okay, just so you know, Doug's family saw the ad and they approved over in the UK, so everything is good. Views and impressions are not the same thing, just so you know, but it is interesting to hear the premier delve into my world. Doug again here, insisting all we wanted to do was start a conversation. We just wanted to have a conversation. The conversation wasn't happening, is what he said. Go back and listen if you want. Listen, then I want my money back. How many times have we flown the premiers and our ambassadors and all of these other politicians? Even the mayor of Toronto went down there at one point to America to try and meet with governors and congress people and senators and you name it. We're going to go and talk to them. And we're going to hope that they pressure Donald Trump into getting rid of the tariffs. Apparently, all of that was completely ineffective, and I want my money back. How many times have we sent these people back to Washington? And now apparently there was no conversation happening? Nothing? Doug says we needed to start a conversation. I was under the impression the conversation was being had. In fact, there must have been some conversation because everybody agrees a deal was imminent. We were ready to go until we blew it up.
Can you talk to the Prime Minister about this and I mean, he was pretty measured in Malaysia today.
Sure.
About you and about this situation. But how are relations with the Prime Minister? Are things strained now because of what's happened?
Not at all. He saw the ad before I put it out. So did his chief of staff. They both saw it, and we moved forward on it. But again, we achieved our goal. As we say, mission accomplished. It was done. They're talking about it in the U.S., and they weren't talking about it before I put the ad on. So I'm glad that Ronald Reagan was a free trader.
So let me see if I understand this. The whole point of putting that ad out was not to get under the skin of Donald Trump. It was to start a conversation, which we certainly did. Apparently, based on Doug's assessment here, the conversation started when Donald Trump realized the Reagan Foundation didn't like that ad and went nuts and suspended trade negotiations. Doug knew then. In fact, he knew the day before that Trump had seen the announcement because he did reference it last Thursday. So if the conversation was the goal, what was the point of airing it for those 2 more nights in America? What was the point of prolonging this and airing it Saturday and Sunday during the World Series? If the goal was to start a conversation, great. The conversation was started. The whole world knew about this when Donald Trump acknowledged it. Was it just to rub salt in the wound Saturday and Sunday during the World Series? Is that what it was? And by the way, I do want to see those numbers. I want to know how much money the premier spent in America on American media airing that commercial after he insisted to all of us that it was basically unpatriotic to spend money in America. This guy was ready to spend $75 million. Good. I agree with him. Glad we didn't have to spend $75 million. The fact that that was a possibility is still kind of crazy to me.
Was explicit today in saying that it was the ad that derailed negotiations which were moving ahead. With that in mind, why don't you feel you owe Ontarians an apology?
For sticking up for Ontarians, well, let's talk about a so-called imminent deal. I've been hearing this for month after month after month, and if there was no mention about auto. It's about steel. The Americans are gouging us on steel, 50% tariff. We're at 25%, but nothing to do with auto. I am focused on, and I love the steel workers. I talk to Ron Bedard, CEO, every second day at the FASCO, supporting him, Algoma, up in Sault Ste. Marie, protecting jobs. But I'm here. My job is to protect jobs here in Ontario. There's no mention whatsoever of auto. I feel like it slipped to the side. I'm going to fight for the auto workers, the steel workers, the manufacturing and life science sector, all these sectors that President Trump wants to annihilate, not just our country, but in particular, he wants to take jobs from Ontario.
And why would President Trump be mad at Ontario? Jesus, I can't figure out why. Ontario's been the biggest pain in the ass in the world when it comes to these negotiations. Ontario in particular. How many times has Trump personally had to address Ontario? From when we threatened to shut off the hydro, all of the comments that keep being made from the premier and all of his television appearances. Now the Reagan ad. Ontario has been the biggest hang-up here. I don't understand how Doug in one breath can say, I don't know what this deal is. Apparently it was imminent deal. I've been hearing about an imminent deal for months. But then goes in to talk about the deal knowing full well that it doesn't include autos. So for him to pretend there wasn't an imminent deal and then talk about the deal that was imminent, I mean, that's just dishonest if you ask me. If the premier wants to clarify, by all means, shoot me a note. If you want to come on, great. I'll ask you some questions. I'd like to get in your head here, Doug. I'd like to understand where you're coming from. And by the way, you can't fault the spirit. You can't fault the heart. No matter how you feel about Doug Ford, his heart is in the right place. He thinks he's doing everything he can to support and protect Ontario. But did we get protected or not? Because it seems like these tariffs are not going anywhere now, not for a while. There's still no deal. And when we got close, it was Ontario that blew up the deal. That was what made Trump walk away from the table. Does he trust Mark Carney to work out a deal or not? Because if Mark Carney and Donald Trump had a deal that was imminent, but it didn't include auto, and that's a major hangup for Doug, then why is Doug still supporting Mark Carney? I don't understand. None of this makes sense unless you look at it through this lens. Doug Ford and Mark Carney playing good cop, bad cop here, whereas Doug is the bad cop. Doug does the dirty work, blows up the deal that Carney doesn't really want to sign anyway. In fact, neither of them, it's possible neither of them want a deal. It's possible. If there's a deal and everything gets back to normal, then these two have got to govern this country through a recession, through incredible economic turmoil, through massive spending, through huge public service cuts. And I don't think either of them wants to face the Canadian people with all of that hanging over their head. It's easier to just make sure there's no deal with America, and then they've got somebody to blame.
That's what he's trying to do, and I'll keep fighting, and I'll never apologize for fighting for the hardworking people.
Why did you decide to run the ads during the World Series, and do you think that made things even worse?
Not at all. I think that's a good impact. Again, we had over 1 billion impressions. We achieved our goal, and our goal is to make sure that we get a fair deal. Not a one-sided Donald Trump deal, but a fair deal for the people of Ontario and Canada. And I'm focused on auto. There's no mention of auto anywhere. We've seen what's happening. I'm fighting for the people down in Windsor, up in Brampton, over in Oshawa, up in Cambridge. Any area that has auto, it's my job to protect those people's employment. That's what I'm.
And how's it going? Stellantis, gone. General Motors, closing. Maybe they'll get replaced, but they're not right now. And there's a lot of folks that are wondering, how did you protect Ontario auto jobs? Because there's been no good news in that industry for a while now. In fact, there's a lot of people that are scared to death they're going to lose their job before Christmas. I mean, I get the sentiment. Protect Ontario. But the reverse seems to be happening. How can Doug Ford say Mark Carney's doing great when Mark Carney was about to do a deal with Donald Trump that didn't do auto, and that's the major hangup for Doug, is it didn't include auto? You either trust Carney or you don't. This is federal jurisdiction.
So did you talk to the Prime Minister about your approach of leaving the ad on for the World Series and then pulling it today? Was he supportive of that, if so?
No, I'm not going to get into personal conversations that we had. He knew I was running it. I said it very clearly to everyone. I'm going to pause it on Monday, which we have. We have achieved our goal, and now let's get back to the table and sit down and have that conversation on how we're going to protect auto jobs here in Ontario.
I wonder if Doug Ford will ever be allowed in America again. I wonder how angry Trump is and how angry the State Department is, because Doug really got under their skin. He really pissed them off. Listen, going after a Republican president, using the voice of a former Republican president in Ronald Reagan, and then trying to undermine the guy at every point has really sufficiently pissed off Donald Trump. Here's Doug still maintaining this was only to start a conversation. This wasn't to poke the bear. This wasn't to blow up a trade deal. This was just to start a conversation. I don't think we got a good answer for why he continued to run it Saturday and Sunday during the World Series. That seems to be a major irritant. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail that asked that question. And yeah, it's a very appropriate question to ask. If you wanted to make a point, if you wanted the message to be seen, okay, you did it. You aired the commercial. Trump freaked out, suspended trade talks. We probably could have fixed it after that. But then you kept it running during the World Series. Why? The conversation had already started.
Yes.
Are you frustrated with how long it's taking, and do you feel cut out from the heart of the negotiation?
No, we play a critical role here in Canada. Ontario's the manufacturing powerhouse in the country, and when Ontario does well, so do all the other provinces and territories. I did have an opportunity to speak to almost every single premier. I think I have a couple in the territories I still have to reach out to. But my comments to them is, you want to keep going? Guys, that my champion Wob Canoe, he's 100% behind it. Another champion, Premier Eby as well. So these are the premiers, total different political stripes than I am, but we're all sticking together. And I went right across the country and spoke to every single premier.
Danielle Smith.
Okay, so, and he's going to answer the Danielle Smith one in a second, and I want you to hear that. I really do. He keeps citing that he spoke to Wob Canoe and David Eby, the two most left-wing premiers in the country. Those are the people that bought into the whole elbows up nonsense. Oh, I'm not surprised. They said keep going. Not surprised at all. What about Francois Legault? What about Danielle Smith? What about Tim Houston? I don't know if he's still a conservative or not, but, there was other premiers, but he only cites two of them that said to keep going, cheering him on. Great, you've got the NDP on your side, but what about the people in the center?
Smith doesn't like the ads, though.
Well, sure enough. Yeah, well, of course, Danielle Smith doesn't like the ads because she's not getting her auto annihilated, her manufacturing, her steel, her life science sector. She has a commodity called oil that the Americans need and want. So she's going to be fine. Ontario won't be fine if we sign a lousy deal. I'd rather have no deal than a terrible deal that will cost jobs here in Ontario.
How many jobs will we lose if there's no deal? That was the real Doug Ford right there. Doug Ford does not like people that disagree with him. Doug Ford is exactly like Donald Trump in so many ways, and he doesn't seem to understand the parallel. He doesn't. Danielle Smith has been a voice of reason. She's been a voice of calm. She was one who was actually down at Mar-a-Lago and actually met with President Trump. She's one who has been quietly in the background working to try and get a deal done, to facilitate whatever she can to get a deal done. Now, Premier Ford is right. She doesn't have nearly as much to worry about because she's got oil in Alberta. Ontario's got an automobile sector, and Doug thinks that this is the best way to protect it. I don't think pissing off Donald Trump was the best way to protect our auto industry, if I'm being honest. Maybe in hindsight, I'll look back on this episode and think, I was wrong. Doug was right. Where do you think this is going? Where do you think we're going to end up here? Do you think intentionally poking the bear, Donald Trump, intentionally trying to get under his skin, not just creating that ad, but continuing to run that ad after he said he wanted it off, and then doing that video that Doug did with Gavin Newsom from California about the World Series and taking a shot at Trump in the video? I played that yesterday if you want to go back and hear it. It seems like Mark Carney was close to a deal that Doug didn't like. That's fine. Doug doesn't have to like the deal that Mark Carney signs. But Doug still says that Mark Carney is doing a great job. I don't know if he's conflicted or not. I know Doug really, desperately wants Mark Carney to call an election because Doug Ford wants Pierre Poilievre to lose so that he's gone as leader so that Doug can run for leader. Even in the House yesterday, the Ontario legislature, the NDP accused Doug Ford of campaigning for prime minister while he's premier of Ontario. And frankly, I can't see it any other way. Is any of this focus on international trade, this focus on fighting with world leaders, is any of this provincial? Because the provincial issues that I see, healthcare, education, etc., don't seem to be getting a lot of oxygen. There doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation about that. And I do understand why. And I think everybody does. I think everybody has heard enough in this episode alone to make you realize we don't want a deal. If we get a deal, that's bad news for Doug Ford and Mark Carney. It's bad for Doug's political ambitions to become Prime Minister of Canada. And that I can't see it any other way. That's what he wants. He's campaigning to be Prime Minister. He wants a snap election. He's hoping Pierre's going to lose, and he's going to do everything he can to undermine Pierre Poilievre and make sure that Poilievre loses. And then he's going to run for Pierre's job. Now, I guess if you don't like Premier Ford and you live in Ontario, the silver lining for you is he's not going to be Premier for much longer. He's not. Someone will take over as interim premier and a leadership race will be called. By the way, just yesterday, the Ontario PCs introduced some changes they want to make to elections. No more fixed election dates. I mean, they didn't stick to them anyway. We weren't supposed to have an election in the spring. Doug just called it. I guess that's okay if the law doesn't have any teeth anyway. If we have fixed election dates, then we have to stick to the fixed election dates. And if the premier can call an election at any time, then it doesn't really matter. But he also wants to increase the amount that someone can contribute from $3,400 to a $5,000 per person political donation. Mandates would go 5 years, and the premier can call an election right up to the last day. We're going to have to talk about that. We're going to need to talk about that because not all of that is necessarily good news for voters. It's not necessarily good news for taxpayers. I'll have another episode for you tomorrow, friends. That's just a little one. That's the I was up late watching the Jays game episode of Scott Fox After 9. Tomorrow there's going to be a lot more. I'm very curious to see what comes next in this saga between Canada and the USA. If you want to weigh in, if you want to have your say, no problem. Slide into my DMs at Scott Fox On Air. And I will catch you right back here tomorrow. I'll leave you today with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. The song is called Hey Now.